What is happening, everybody, man? Thank you guys tuning in to the Agent to CEO podcast. And man, I am excited to dive in with our guest today. Connie, how are you doing?
I'm great, John. How are you?
Fantastic. I appreciate you carving out some time, jumping in here to hang out with us for a little bit.
Oh my gosh, of course. It's an honor to be here. And after that intro, I'm pumped up. I love that. That's so awesome.
Yes, I love it too, and get the team to stretch it out a little bit longer, right? Get a little more energy going to get us
Yeah, no,
rocking.
it's so fun to see all the faces.
Yeah, it is, and it's like one of the things that you and I've been talking about leading into kind of today's conversation, and it's really what it is, right? It's really, conversation, really unpacking your story a little bit, kind of the transition, some of the growth that you had to have, not only in your business, but also, personally, who you have to become in order to really step in and embrace that role and in the whole agent to CEO concept that we've kind of lived by for, my 21 years in this game. um, you know, just trial and tribulations and tough markets, good markets, to be able to see what it takes to really build a small business that can endure and continue to thrive. So I'm really excited to get in and unpack and have you share your story. So why don't you take us back? I mean, you've been playing this game for quite a while, and I mean, let's go back to kind of the beginning and what that looked like, and why even getting into real estate.
Oh my gosh. Well, but the beginning was a long time ago. So 1999 seems like forever ago, but I've been thinking about this a lot, and I really think that I have to go back to even before that because a lot of the conversations that I've been having lately, and I don't talk much about my childhood, my humble beginnings, but I think it's really important to know that life hasn't always been this. Um, so my parents, I grew up, gosh, I think at one point we, moved from apartment to apartment. We lived in a Section 8 apartment for a while. My, I remember my last house that I graduated in high school, like all we had for heat was like a wood burning stove. So this crazy like childhood of mine, which was very humble, again, like I was the baby of 7 kids. My mom stayed home, was a homemaker. My dad worked construction. And it was just through their hard work and watching them and watching, what they did and how they were there for us, really shaped who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that has, a huge underlying, um, you know, story for who I've actually become and what motivates me and why I work so hard these days. So I think that's part of it.
As you were sharing that, makes me think of the story of the father that has 2 boys, and he's a full-blown alcoholic, and one of his sons becomes just like him, and one of his sons becomes the exact opposite of him. And so it's usually that upbringing that you see, that you either pursue down that path, or you go a completely opposite direction.
Yeah, and you and I've had the conversation before. You feel like people are either out to prove something or out to make someone proud. And I think for me, it was a little bit of both. Like I really thought about that statement after you and I talked about it that before. And at first in my career, the first part of my career, I really think I was out to prove something. And now later, as I get a little bit older, hopefully a little bit wiser, I'm out to really make my family proud. So things have evolved very much in the last 25 years.
Yeah, I think it's a maturity thing. I think as we
Yeah.
get a little bit older, and kiddos get older, you get kiddos out of the house, and you start to see, kind of the decisions they're making, and the things they're doing. And even looking back as did kind of the thought exercise, obviously, this month was 21 years in real estate. January will be 21 years licensed for me. So getting in by default in 2004, just because I was taking, an operational position. And, being a small town, like, this, that, from a team, our whole perspective was, everybody gets licensed, right? It's
Hmm.
protect ourselves because, just as you get a target on your back. So we just wanted to protect ourselves. And that was my reason for getting licensed. And it wasn't until, a few years later that I actually, jumped into the trenches and actually, help buyers and sellers. But for me, it was in by default. So for you, obviously you have this upbringing and really shaping you. But what was the inspiration to get into real estate?
It was much the same as you. Like I got into it by default. So I was at school at Alabama and in Tuscaloosa, born and raised in Tuscaloosa. So I naturally just migrated there for college. And I was there for an interior design degree. And, I was always drawn to these beautiful aesthetics. And um, I just thought that that was the way I wanted to go.
Mhm.
But I needed to pay my way through college. So I got a job leasing apartments. And I was working on campus at the university, and these parents would come in and they, would say, "Oh, well, we've got, Johnny and Susie coming to school here. We're going to be leasing apartments for 8 years." They'd look at the cost and they decide to buy a house. So growing up a little bit competitive, again, I'm a baby of seven, right? So I had to fight
You had to be,
for
yeah.
I had to fight for everything I got. I thought I really want to sell a house to these people that aren't going to buy or at least an apartment, for 8 years. So I got my real estate license, kind of just like to make some extra money, thinking that it was going to be easy money, as everybody always does, right?
Yeah.
And wound up selling my first house by door knocking on a house on campus that a guy said, "Hey, if you can find me a house on this street, I'll buy it." So got into it. And then, of course, I just fell in love with it and fell in love with the deal, fell in love with the people, fell in love with the emotional high you get from helping someone. And I just never looked back.
Yeah. You were hooked. You were hooked.
I was definitely hooked. Yes,
Yeah, yeah, and then the paycheck comes along, and that makes it even nicer. So that
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 really helped.
that'll hook you in even more, and especially when you've been grinding it out and trying to you know make ends meet and just do anything you can, and especially that time frame, hourly rate where it was, and you start to look at it, you're like, dang, okay, is there something here? Looking back, I mean, what, 26, 27 years for you, you know, if you could, with your, experience and wisdom, what would you tell, yourself back then in 99, if you could go back and, kind of coach you and mentor you at that time?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I think about that all the time. And, thinking about like if I would do things differently, I don't. It's not really my MO. Honestly, I think that everything I've learned, every step that I've taken has been such um, a learning opportunity for me. And so I don't think too much about that. But if I were going to go back and coach me, um, I would get around the people that knew more than me faster, because I really didn't start coaching until 2016, 2017. And at that point, my business, my focus, my targets really changed. And I think if I had done that earlier, who knows where we would be sitting today. But I think that the coaching aspect of it is huge.
Yeah, really collapsing time. That's fascinating. You went 16, 17 years in your career before leaning into the coaching side of things. I mean, for me, it was, I mean, obviously just I'm, born into, it's just, I'm just hardwired, right? Like I don't know any different. I mean, I'm just being born into the coaching side of things. I knew I didn't want to go, especially especially within the public school system route, like my dad was, just because I saw the paychecks and I was just like, no, I'm good. And then even being in the golf world, even on the coaching and training side, seeing those paychecks, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. There's just got to be a better way. And I think kind of even looking at you and, your career and, just kind of the growth, especially moving into more of the luxury market, was that something that, when did that start to happen? Where did you make that decision to move into, the upper end market?
Yeah, it's funny because there was almost like this double life going on for me, even as a child, right? Because I was raised in a certain capacity, and my parents, of course, did the best they could, but then they also put me in these pageants as a child too. So, like, then I was exposed to the fact that I could win cars and I could win beautiful things and all the prizes, and I had great jewelry as a 12-year-old girl, so it was like, oh my gosh, like I like these nice things. I love, of course, beautiful aesthetics. And I got a job at 15 so that I could buy my own clothes, so like I was I was not afraid of hard work by any means. But when I really started focusing on, growing my brand and who I was as a person, who I was as a real estate agent, um, I looked at people in different markets and I saw things that, and we're in Alabama. So I always kind of looked at LA or what was going on in New York or Miami and wanted to do some of those same things here. And it just seems so far-fetched at the time. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, like to me, like even looking back now, like I think that it was far-fetched at the time, but I loved those things and I loved those people and I loved the vibe that I was seeing. And I thought I just was crazy enough to believe that I could do the same thing here. So um, I latched on to a couple of people that I really looked up to and thought a lot of, and I watched everything they did, and I would put myself in the spaces that they were in and the rooms that they were in. And I never will forget, my husband and I were driving through one of the most affluent parts of Birmingham, a little town called Mountain Brook. And he was driving, which he often does, thank goodness. But I was on my phone and I was kind of on this fashion app that I really like. And they have this section that's called Luxe, a Luxe section, a
Yeah.
Luxe brand. And so I always went there first because I was like, okay, what luxury items do they have? And I'm not necessarily like, I have two boys, so I've always put them first and I don't really spend tons of money on myself. But at that moment, I was like, I want to just see. And it dawned on me, it wasn't even the shopping for me at that moment, it was the marketing. And it dawned on me that that's where I need to be. That's where I want to be. And that's the message that I want to portray in real estate, that we are luxe. We are a luxury brand. We are a luxury agent in this market. And so it was literally in the car at that very moment that I decided we were going to get into luxury real estate. And it
Mm.
was a decision. It was literally a decision.
I love that. And sometimes it just happens, right? You catch it and it, and then you try it on. You're like, yes, this is it.
I'd love
How
to say it was a more beautiful story than that,
I
but it
love it. It's
literally
awesome.
was just,
Yeah,
yeah, it was
yeah.
very much a decision that I made. And I do think a lot about marketing and new ideas and new things, new products, new services, ways to serve people at a higher level. And it just made sense to me at that moment.
Connie, when you like kind of talking about and we start to have nice things, especially if you don't come from a lot of nice things and you start to have it, and then you kind of get into that status game, right? You move out of survival into status. But when does status start to become the standard, right? Like where does that slippery slope to where, this is my standard versus I'm just chasing status? So like, how do you look at those two things?
I had an agent say to me the other day that we fly a little bit under the radar, and I thought it was very interesting. She's an agent in my market, great, amazing agent. She's doing amazing things. And and we don't post every day, and we don't post all types of things. We're very precise about what we do post and about the message that we put out there. And you and I had this conversation. It's we want to make sure that the message that we are saying, that we are putting out there. And I think that that is our standard. We kind of decided that from the very beginning, that this is who we are. And if we can't put out the product and deliver the service that we want to deliver, we're going back to the drawing board before we do it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a status thing for us. It's not a name brand, what are we wearing? What are we driving? It's none of those things. It's the service that we provide for people and the standard that we set for other agents kind of in our market.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. To me, it can be a little bit of a slippery slope. It's almost maybe status is something you chase and a standard is just what you live. And that might be a little more of that distinction. And because I
Yeah.
default back to it, right? Like, if you could go back and coach yourself, 98, 99, getting into the business. And I look back, go back and coach, in 04, 05, for us, that's been my answer has always been, I would have made sure that we didn't keep chasing status, chasing being number one, chasing the wrong things versus focus on building freedom, right? Trying to
Right.
do things to build wealth, um, without, sacrificing the standards that you have. And sometimes I think when you chase status, you will sacrifice standards just to there. And I loved what you said, right? Almost flying under the radar, but there's an elegance, there's class, there's standard that we keep, the word that we keep coming back to, that I think is absolutely critical for longevity in a marketplace.
Yeah, I'm not very motivated by status, and honestly, like I probably couldn't tell you where I am in the MLS rankings, because we are so focused on, if I'm doing the work behind the scenes, it's how can I serve people better? How can I serve them well? And how can our agents serve them well? And are we doing the things that we need to do in order to be able to serve them well? So we're not really focused, I feel like, on the status things. It is mostly the standard for us.
When you look at kind of that lux, that feel, that look, and we talked a little bit about this. I think this is great, worth revisiting, and it's more of a mindset that you have, right? And it's that you don't start, working with, entry level, buyers and sellers and build this and then try to grow up. It's focus on how would you market and sell and communicate and deliver to the highest level in your marketplace. And then you just do that for everybody in the marketplace. Kind of talk
That's
a little bit
exactly.
about that.
Yeah, we even train our agents. So, like agents that, maybe have had a couple of years experience as they come on the team, um, we train them with luxury first. And so we train them in, the art of communicating with high net worth individuals and what that looks like. And I feel like, as a high D myself, and I think I could say this, a driver, that it's those are the types of people that I love to work with. They don't have
Mhm.
time for the fluff. They don't, or they aren't easily offended. They want us to come in, be precise, be on target, hit our goals, get the job done, and do it very well. And I feel like we do that very well. But as we train people to that level, then hey, it's so much easier to work with people who just love to start talking about the parties and doing all the things, right? Because like that's so much easier conversation to have. But we set the standard pretty high, and we require them to learn luxury first, and then that just trickles down in every single thing that they touch and every single thing that they do as they're, working with
Yeah.
every client and every price point.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
it's so good. And when you were articulating that to me, I'm like, that's right. That is so right. The right way of approaching, because I think if you start there, I think it's hard to shift the mindset to go the other way.
Well,
And
I think sometimes as an agent, like you can really jump into like getting comfortable in a certain price point or working with a certain type of buyer or seller. And I mean, that's even true for luxury too, right? But at the same time, like a lot of agents that I've met over the years believe that they're only good at working with investors because they've done it for so long, or they're
yeah,
only good at X. And we like to really debunk some of those myths that they come in, thinking.
yeah. And that's a great set. What are some of those myths that a lot of people have when they're working with higher end, clientele in whatever? Every market has luxury, right? I don't care where you're at. There's always, different levels in every marketplace. But what are some of the myths that you've seen that you guys debunk, especially from a mindset perspective of agents coming in on the team, or even agents that you train or talk to across the country on working with, higher end, buyers and sellers?
Oh, there are so many. I mean, I'm not sure where to start, from the
How much time do we have, right?
yeah, that's exactly right. Like there, it's a matter of, and I think it doesn't even matter with luxury. I think that every single person is so different. The agent personalities are different, the buyer personalities are different, the seller personalities are different. And I think it really just comes back to like what we always tell our agents is the client's goal becomes the goal.
Mm,
In the end, it doesn't matter what your goal is at the end of the day. What is the client's goal? And how do we help them? How do we serve them? How do we meet their needs? And if we're doing that, then I feel like everything else is going to fall into place. But, myths, my goodness, there are some agents that are difficult to work with. Buyers and sellers can be difficult to work with. I mean, honestly, I really just think it's how you approach the opportunity in front of you that you're given and how quickly you can solve people's problems.
yeah. So not getting caught up, or not getting, I think too, sometimes people get, disempowering beliefs, things that just aren't true, right? It's like, well, I've never owned, or I've never lived in a home like that. What makes me deserving or qualified to be able to, help that individual with whatever their goals are? So how do you help like newer agents or agents coming in, or even sometimes yourself, how early on, right before, making the transition, and really like, hey, this is us, this is where we're playing. How do you, stay in the right mindset to where, you can help these people instead of letting some of these, false beliefs slow us down?
I think it's a skill set, and I think it's their commitment to, the training and showing up every day. And us being able to show them, hey, we've had a brand new agent on our team come on the team, make, way more than six figures their first year, in real estate, by helping and serving. We've had, agents that have come on the team to buy their first house. Um, and pay for their kids' college educations, like so many things that we've seen and been able to watch them hit their goals. And then that creates this atmosphere of possibility on the team for even the other agents. They see that, they're watching that, they believe that, and it's hard not to get excited when other
Sure.
people on the team are really hitting, major milestones in their life.
Where was that belief instilled in you? Was it some of the pageant stuff? Did that form kind of a bigger
You know,
belief in
I
confidence in
don't
yourself?
I don't think it did. I think mine came literally purely from like needing to survive, like to begin with, honestly. It was like I I was married previously and it was not a great relationship, and being able to like walk away and get out start over in my real estate career. Like I on the table. I really didn't know how I was going to feed my two kids at the time, so
Mm.
like I didn't have a plan B. There was no plan B. There was just this. And I think it is when, the rubber meets the road and you are dealt with, like this is the hand you're dealt with and you've got to make things happen. I didn't know what else to do. So like, real estate was it for me. And I think that that was probably where, like maybe before I kind of always felt like had a fallback or something to fall back on. And then this was like, no, there's no net under you. Get out
Yeah.
there and do it.
What was the proof knowing you're on the right path and there's no other option? I mean, we're all in on this.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's terrifying. But, it's I think that we all at some point in our lives, and especially like being part of other agents' lives, right? At some point, we're dealing with those same things, maybe in a different capacity, maybe it's a different scenario, but we all deal with things that terrify us.
Yeah.
And I think it's how fast, from one fall down to the next, how fast can we get back up and get out there? It really just, I mean, that's success to me is, does it put me in the bed for a day? Does it, make me stop and say I have to call someone, like, my phone and a friend, like what's going on? But I think that when things happen that are beyond our control, innately, you know what you need to do.
Yeah.
It's it. My dad used to call it your knower. You know, and your knower. Maybe that's a Southern thing. I'm not sure, but I truly have developed that belief that is, it's that discernment. I think that's inside that I just always gravitate back to.
Yeah. Yeah. Being able to trust your gut and, kind of the upbringing, being the youngest, of seven and fighting for everything, fighting for, just to be included, fighting for, just to want to play with, your siblings friends and things like that. It definitely will shape you and will create a fighter in you, which is pretty awesome to see. As you've been kind of fighting and then really stepping into kind of the Lux brand, having that aha moment. I mean, where do really see the direction, especially as the luxury market moving, where we're at now, moving into 26 and beyond, as you're starting to see, not only in your market, but as you're having experience, even just, throughout the state and just conversations throughout the country, like where are you starting to see the luxury trends moving and where the business opportunity really is?
Yeah, it's exciting to be part of it. It's exciting to, get to see the new technology and the new things that people are looking for. I think that two different aspects to this, right? There's like our agent technology that we have that agents are going to need to be able to be up on AI and understand how it can make their time and their jobs more efficient and what they're doing more efficient so that they can have more face-to-face time with, the buyers and sellers, the people that really are our lifeblood. And then for homeowners, like it's really exciting to kind of see their opportunities as well. We've got the largest house in Alabama under contract right now, and it's as soon as it closes, it's going to undergo a full renovation of like this wellness area, for the owners. Like he's shared
Yeah.
some of the things with us, and that is so fun to see. Is like, there's cold plunge and there's saunas and there's, smoothie bars inside the house, and there's all kinds of things that just make it like, super exciting and super fun to be part of and be able to watch things come about in the luxury space that then we can then turn around and share with other people as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. We've talked about that a few weeks ago, just on the marketing to the affluent side of things. Dan Kennedy's work, and then also kind of some of the trends that we're seeing on the wellness side of things, and being able to showcase, that as we're starting to really uncover, that's truly what, the higher price point markets are really looking for. And so making sure aligning, our marketing and our message and our content to that, is really, really important. Is that kind of the biggest trend that you're starting to see in the luxury market, that they're really wanting more around life, longevity, health?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, hands down. I mean, it's a whole process all by itself. I mean, you could spend um, an infinite amount of money and time into those uh, products and services that, we've got a listing right now that has a golf simulator, and it's a whole room, and it has a moving platform for the putting green, and it's just like it's amazing because we have a business down the street that is the exact same thing, and it's like this is in someone's home.
Yeah.
So the distance between um, needing to go somewhere to do these things and participate in these things versus being able to have it in your own home these days, like it's become, you know, fewer and far between, like needing to go down the street. Now we've got it at home.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're starting to see more and more of, right? And even just in home ownership in general, right? Especially if they have space to be able to create, to be able to have the things. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we're starting to see it, all over the country, that's what, people are wanting in their homes. They're wanting, the entertainment aspect. They're wanting to be able to stay in, especially with kiddos, right? You want to be able to create the environment to where, you have the kiddos come to the house. You keep it, you know what they're doing, what they're up to. So I think it's really key. And then being able to make sure you're capturing that in your content and your marketing to be able to showcase, because that's what, that, buyers are wanting to see.
That's right. Yeah. And, it's the whole lifestyle thing too, from, they live on the golf course. Of course, you're walking off the golf course, you're coming into the golf simulator, you're, perfecting your game, that maybe what didn't go so perfect on the golf course. So I think that all of those things are, an indicator to everyone wants, a lifestyle where, but it was COVID, right? Like COVID did this to us, like
Mhm.
bring everything home. Let's put everything in our box instead of us having to go out and search for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, just even seeing, coming out of there, just even a lot of the changes, even with in the working side of things, right? Where, um, you're starting to see a lot of, hey, you got to come back into the office. But the really talented people, um, they want the flexibility. They still want to be able to, not be in the office every day, and they're getting a little bit of, they're given a little bit of leverage now. The talent, right? Now the emerging talent, stay plugged in, do the thing, but you're starting to really, kind of see that. Back to speaking to the buyers and sellers, in the upper price point luxury markets. What are some of the things, as a buyer or seller in that market, that they need to be thinking about, and how are you going about, educating? Conversations I've had has been more, they really don't have a pain, right? We talk, a vitamin company or a painkiller, right? And for a lot, you want to be a painkiller because, yeah, we get how important vitamins are. However, when you don't have any money, you're not buying vitamins, but you would, you know, cut off one of your legs to solve another pain, as long as that pain's solved as well. And so getting in that upper price point market, there's really no pain. It's more desire. So how are you talking to buyers and sellers? How does the message need to be on the education of pricing and positioning and value, and when's a better time to buy, when's a better time to sell? But what's the conversation from you as an agent that you need to be conveying to, the marketplace, to buyers and sellers right now?
Yeah, I think the message is consistent for us across the board, regardless of the price point. I love, playing in that luxury space, but it's still about a great process, driving results. And, as Sharon always says, to do great things, you've got to do fewer things.
Yeah.
And I think for us, like, we are so precise on, pricing, marketing, the things that we are involved in, the message that we're sending. We're not going to play a ton of different things. We're not going to do a ton of different things. But what we do decide to do with the buyer or with the seller, especially the sellers in that market, are really going to determine, where we're priced, where we're positioned, like their goals. But it is really comes back to the process and doing the same things over and over and over again. And if you've got a great process, you're going to be able to deliver that. And of course, that process, like, it sounds easy, right? But it's super complicated. Like, what is that process, and how precise is that process, and what points are in that process? So I think all of that is really, really valuable, really important, and it matters so much these days of who you're working with and who you're learning from, who you're coaching with. Like, it all makes such a huge difference right now.
Is Connie, so what you're talking about, right? You're talking about the consistency, you're talking about the systems, the process. And I know creating that, um, Ritz Carlton, Ruth Chris type of experience.
Yes.
Like, how important is creating, and I love coming, to the Ritz analogy, and like, everybody listen, like, if you haven't stayed at the Ritz, like, go stay at a Ritz just to experience the level of detail that goes into, the moment they talk to you, how they're talking to you, how, like, they're showing up. It's things that you and I talk about all the time, right? Sweat the small stuff. So looking at and how important that experience is to you, like, what does that system look like? What is that focus? What is the emphasis? What is the less than more, right? A handful of rules, repeat yourself. Like, what are the handful of mantras and rules that you're constantly talking about over and over to make sure that we deliver that, Ritz
There,
Carlton
yeah,
experience?
absolutely. There's required reading on our team, and the Nordstrom Way
Mm,
is a book,
yep.
um, and it is all about serving the customer, and it is all about the process over and over and over and over and over again. And so many times I have agents come to the team with such big eyes and big ideas, and I love their ideas, and we want to welcome all of those. But at the same time, they get so, in every single direction, and then they haven't sold a house. And they've been working this same system for the last 3 years, maybe unsuccessfully, maybe a little success here and there, but then it's when we can really hone in on what's important to them and what parts they want to keep and what parts are not necessary to keep. And making sure that we're delivering the same service and the same message over and over and over again. I think that really came from that book, the Nordstrom Way, and the way that we wanted to make sure that every single agent, again, was trained on luxury first. Every single agent knew that process backwards and forwards. Every single agent can have those very difficult price reduction conversations at the listing appointment and not wait 45, 60 days in. So we're doing the hard things at the very beginning, and I think that just sets them up for success in the long run. Um, but there's a quote by Gandhi that has really shaped, like, our core values, our mission statement. And you've all heard the quote, but it's: your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny.
Yeah.
And that is like the heart of our team. That's the heart of our business as agents, my heart as a mom. Like, my job is to be able to convey that not only to agents, but to our buyers and sellers as well. Like, we live by that. And that is a huge, mantra for me personally, that I feel like um, a lot of positive things really flow from that, and that keeps us in that headspace of hopeful expectation instead of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next?
I love that. I love that mantra. Talk a little bit about how you're putting that into practice on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
It's just it's a daily, you know, prayer, honestly, when you get right down to it. Um, you know, your value system and train, you know, this is what I teach my kids too, because honestly, like I'm a mom before anything else. Um, I so have the heart and long for them to do well and to have a happy life. And I think it's funny because you and I have talked about this. So I'm going to take the long road in describing this. So bear with me.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about would you change things, would you change your life? I feel like I have such a beautiful life. I am so extremely blessed and so extremely happy right now in my life, and I wouldn't change a thing. Now, if it would be so tempting if I could really go back and change some things, right? I think we all would. But I have ended up in this place where I'm perfectly content with the things that happen today, good and bad. And that's a very special place. And I think that that really does come from your beliefs
Mhm.
and how you are grounded and your faith, and you know, just coming back to all of those things is super personal, and the way that I was raised and brought up. And my parents had, you know, a beautiful marriage until my dad passed. They had been married for 43 years, and um, that really does shape every part of my life. And I just have to be a little philosophical for a moment, you know, in saying all of those things, because yes, it's a daily practice, but it really does come back to, again, your goals, your values, what you want most out of life. And I really do try to start the day with gratitude.
Yeah.
Gratitude for all that I have, gratitude for things that are going to happen that haven't happened yet, and just remain, like I said before, like in that hopeful expectation space of, you know, things are going to happen well out of our control, but um, we're going to remain grateful and hopeful.
Yeah, I love that. That's it is so powerful, right? It's the, the struggle ends when gratitude begins, and if you just
Right.
really have that gratitude practice, how do you stay how do you keep the fire lit, right? Because sometimes it's facing a headwind. Sometimes it's easy to kind of slow down a little bit, or sometimes even when things get rolling, right, and things are good, to get a little complacent sometimes, to pause for a second. So how do you stay driven and like I said, keep that fire lit?
Their names are Amos and John Ross, and they're my two children. It makes it really easy for me, you know, to stay. Again, there's that, you know, am I trying to make someone proud or am I trying to prove something? It comes back to wanting to make them proud, and they've seen the best and the worst of me, and so it really does come back to um, making them proud at the end of the day. But you know, at the same time, like I know it's not that necessarily that way for everyone. Um, and you know, I just think I love Coach Saban, and I have to kind of talk about some of the stuff, you know, in his processes. Like, I'm an Alabama girl, so, you know, you
Yeah,
are probably going to hear some
yeah,
of that. But he's so spot on when it comes to complacency. And, you know, I heard him give a speech one time. He talked about there's this really scary spot, like when you hit a goal, where you take your foot off the gas
mhm,
and you just relax for a minute. And he said, I never want the team to feel that relax or that exhale or that moment of like, we've done it or we've made it. And complacency is the enemy, right?
yeah,
Like, you know, when it comes to like, I'm just completely fine with where I am. And I know that I'm contradicting myself because 10 minutes ago I just said, you know, hey, I love where I am. I do, but it's not enough. It's not enough. and I don't want to take my foot off the gas so much that I miss an opportunity to love someone, to serve someone, to help someone in any capacity when it's put in front of me.
Yeah, that's so good. It's so good. And there's so many lessons, no matter what you think about, you know, Saban. I'm, obviously I have my, being a, from Oklahoma. So I have my,
Right?
my
Yeah.
my
You're a
Sooners,
Sooner.
right? So like, my aunt, really instilled me early on, to be a San Francisco, so a 49ers fan and a Giants baseball fan. And that was the two first ballparks I've ever been. I mean,
Sure.
I saw Candlestick. I saw my first football game in Candlestick, saw my first baseball game in Candlestick. And so it's just been kind of hardwired to be a 49er fan. But as I've gotten older, it's more wherever the Sooners are at. So, definitely on the Bucks bandwagon, happy for Jalen, which we can
Right,
kind of
right.
share. We can kind of share
We
Jalen,
can. We
but
certainly
there's
can.
but there's so many lessons when you draw inspiration from greatness, and you draw from, the in everything that you really look back at, right? Like the true greatness is, to me, is in the details. It's in the consistency. It's in the fire, in the drive. You can look at, the greatest examples, throughout, basketball, football, and sports just gives us, I think, the entertainment aspect to be able to see it and appreciate greatness. Sometimes we don't appreciate it in the moment, and being able to reflect back and being able to see it. And I think that's just a great reminder, you know, the level that you play at, the details matter. And it's one of the things that I've noticed more and more lately, and how important every little aspect, every little detail is to get you from, one level to the next.
Yeah, what would Saban have said if somebody had told him, "Hey, you'll never be better than Bear Bryant," you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he had big shoes to fill,
Yeah.
coming into that, but he also had a goal, and he made a lasting impact on that organization and on the people that he touched. And I think that for me is such an inspiration. And at the end of the day, like we can't get to everybody, but the people that are placed in front of us, we have a huge responsibility to take care of them.
Yeah. It's striving for that greatness, right? And obviously something, he was able to do is, change the game. I mean, he changed the level of competition throughout all of
Yeah.
college football. And so, you, even in your market, changing, the level of play in the marketplace, it's inspiring. And then, then how do we then take over the state, and then how do we take over the country? So I think, definitely getting that dialed in, and really kind of knowing your lane, and what it takes to be able to thrive, at this level.
Yeah, the tide rises all ships, right? So
Yeah.
we just, again, I think it's holding our hands out and helping people up, and being that other agent, even on the other side of the transaction, that is so important to um, be a helping hand. It's the entire transaction matters.
Yeah.
And I think that there are just, there's a lot of people in this business that don't care about the details, and there's a lot of people in the business that do. And then there's a lot of people in the business that are kind of in the middle that have no idea what the details should be. And that's where hopefully we come in so we can help them with that.
Yeah. So good. Connie, I appreciate you jumping in here, and, excited to, not only kind of unpack kind of where you've been, but, even more excited about where you're going. And I think, obviously, I think, longevity, says something, right? You don't get to play this game. It's not rewarded by being around the longest in real estate. It's about being around, doing the right thing, holding a high standard, to me, that tells a lot of the story. So I appreciate you jumping in here, sharing, unpacking, your story, and just like I said, excited to see where the future takes us.
Yeah, thank you so much, John, for today. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Guys, make sure you guys get connected with Connie, Connie Alexander Jax on Instagram, put out just some awesome high level content, precision, and it's fire. So Connie, thank you guys. We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you.
Thanks, John.